What about the abuse I faced from his MPs calling me a transphobe for supporting what the Supreme Court has now clarified in his words?
They're not Conservatives, they're a con.
His Labour leader in Scotland was whipping his MSPs to get male rapists into women's prisons. I stopped that gender recognition bill.
The only fiction here is the idea she delivered anything in office.
And the truth is, he doesn't have the balls. A happy St George's Day. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister now accept that when he said that it was the law that trans women were women, he was wrong?
I welcome the Supreme Court ruling on this issue. I do think this is the time now to lower the temperature, to move forward and to conduct this debate with the care and compassion that it deserves. And I think that should unite the whole House.
He can't bring himself to admit that he was wrong. That was the question. But he spoke about respect and dignity and compassion and lowering the temperature. So will he now apologise to the member for Canterbury, the very brave member for Canterbury, for hounding her out of the Labour Party simply for telling the truth?
I've always approached this on the basis that we should treat everyone with dignity and respect, whatever their different views, and I'll continue to do so. When we lose sight of that approach and make this a political football, and we end up with the spectacle of a decent man, previous Prime Minister, diminishing himself at this dispatch box by making trans jokes whilst the mother of a murdered trans teenager watched from the public gallery just up there. My approach will be to support the ruling, to protect single-sex spaces and treat everybody with dignity and respect.
There is no apology for the member for Canterbury. There is no taking of responsibility. He talks about political football. He practically kicked her out of his party. Constructive dismissal. He talks about my predecessor. What about the abuse I faced from his MPs calling me a transphobe for supporting what the Supreme Court has now clarified in his words? And where was he? He hid for 6 days without commenting on the Supreme Court judgment. Why did it take him so long to respond? Isn't it because he was scared?
The only fiction here is the idea she delivered anything in office. She held the post of Minister for Women and Equalities for 2 years. And she did precisely nothing. Did nothing to improve women's lives. They talk, for example, about hospitals and mixed-sex wards, uphill and downdale. What happened in the last decade? There's a pattern of behaviour here. Women and Equalities Minister failed to do anything for women. The Trade Minister, who failed to get a trade deal with the US. The Business Minister, who failed to get a deal with British Steel. She's a spectator, not a leader.
Mr. Speaker, I will tell him what I did. I stopped the gender... I will. Yes. When his Labour leader in Scotland was whipping his MSPs to get male rapists into women's prisons, I stopped that gender recognition bill. I helped commission the CAS review. I replaced the guidance on single-sex toilets. I made sure that the puberty blockers issue was resolved while he was sitting there cheering on the ideology that was taking away safe spaces. And when the Prime Minister stayed silent last week, presumably waiting for what Morgan McSweeney thinks, on his WhatsApp groups, some of his closest ministers were plotting to overturn the Supreme Court decision. Labour MP after Labour MP stood up yesterday and challenged the ruling. How can we take his government seriously on this?
Well, I think the WhatsApp group you should be worried about is the one of his shadow Justice Secretary. Shadow Justice Secretary is not here. A man who's doing everything he can to replace her. The man that most of them want as leader of their party has admitted that Reform and the Tories are working together. He said he's determined to bring this coalition, he calls it, together one way or another. Well, I think we know what that means. They're not Conservatives, they're a con.
Who's playing political football now? He's got no answers. Yesterday, Labour MP after Labour MP challenged the ruling. He should be more worried about his backbenchers than my frontbenchers. Baroness Faulkner's role is critical to enforcing the court's judgment. She has had to put up with relentless abuse, not just from his front bench, but from activists and ideologues. Reappointing her will be a clear sign that he is taking this issue seriously. So will he commit to reappointing Baroness Faulkner when her term expires this year?
I've always said the debate should be conducted properly on the principles of debate. I've said it many, many times. But I would remind the Leader of the Opposition that when they were in government, violence against women and girls reached record highs, rape prosecutions fell to record lows, and millions of women were left stuck on NHS waiting lists, unable to get the health care that they needed. He talks about political footballs, but a coalition between Reform and the Tories being formed behind her back when the Shadow Justice Secretary and the member for Clacton cook up their joint manifesto, NHS charging a pro-Russia foreign policy, enter workers' rights. Just as the Love government lost control of the economy, the borders and health, in 6 short months, she's lost control of her party.
It's clearly so uncomfortable talking about this subject, yes. This is a choice between a Conservative Party that stood up for common sense and a Labour Party that bent the knee to every passing fad. This is a question about moral courage, Mr. Speaker, about doing the right thing even when it is difficult. And the truth is, he doesn't have the balls. The Prime Minister only tells people what they want to hear. He only tells people what they want to hear. He is a weather vane who twists in the wind. He cheered an ideology that denied safe spaces to women and girls because he thought it was cool to do so. He hounded a brave female MP out of his party for telling the truth he accepts now. And now he is hiding behind the Supreme Court judgment. And isn't that because he doesn't know what he actually believes?
But the truth is, it doesn't really matter what the Leader of the Opposition says, because nobody believes, none of them, that she's going to lead them into the next election anyway. It's going to be the Shadow Justice Secretary. He's away plotting, that's why he's not here today, Mr. Speaker. And the member for Clacton fighting over the bones of the Tory party. And they think Reform are going to give them their votes without changing their policy. Absolutely no way. The member for Clacton's going to do what he always does, eat the Tory party for breakfast.